Welcome back to my Dungeons & Dragons channel, where we take a look at the rules of Dungeons & Dragons to make powerful characters, pick useful spells, find items that make us more powerful, learn to homebrew, and generally appreciate the game. Today we're going to be talking about a persistent meme online, about how as soon as wizards hit 5th level and get their 3rd level spell slots, they take Fireball and then become a Fireball caster. I didn't ask how big the room was, I said I cast Fireball. It's a classic meme. Listen, I get it, I love Fireball. My first wizard was a firebug who loved Fireball. And if your DM is a wargamer who's regularly throwing large groups of enemies at you where you need to quickly clear them out, then it may actually be the best choice for you. Being able to do 8d6 fire damage to everyone in a 20-foot radius who fails potentially leaves a massive gaping hole in the goblins chasing you through the tunnels, into the lines of the approaching armies, or destroying hordes of skeletons charging you. But 8d6 just isn't that much damage if it's only going to a single target, and isn't even that much if it's going to 2 or 3 targets. Especially if they save and make it effectively 4d6, and especially if it's an enemy who's resistant to fire damage, which is one of the most common resistances. Then it's just 2d6. If you're trying to take out a whole battalion or damage the evil fate court as you all jump into combat, then Fireball is the perfect spell. I just think that it's not as often as people think that their table actually looks like that. And there's several other 3rd level spells that jump out as me as better choices for your wizard when they reach level 5. So we're going to go over 5 spells straight out of the basic rules that I think you should take before Fireball. If you disagree with me, hop down in the comments and tell me how Fireball is the only spell you need, or tell me how I'm missing out on the clearly better spell that you use at your table. The last 2 of these 5 will be my favorite 2 for this level, and there's a couple of honorable mentions after that we'll get into. The first one I want to talk about is Sending. Sending is a 3rd level evocation spell that lets you send a message of 25 words or less to another creature you know. This creature hears your message and is able to respond. Works anywhere on the same plane, and even on different planes, it works 19 out of 20 times when you cast it. This one is obviously going to be a little bit campaign dependent. If your group really works independently outside of the existing power structures, then you may find it less valuable. But in my experience, as soon as you've moved out of your first town, being able to reach allies and friends is hugely important in order for you to actually develop power in the world. Plus, it has tons of other useful things. Imagine you found a library. Now, with Sending, you're able to reach out to someone there and commission a researcher with a new assignment. It'll take you still a few days to send your gold by courier or something else, but they will have already started on that research assignment, and you can continue checking in to see if they've made progress. Or imagine you need to hire a mercenary crew quickly to help you clear out a dungeon. So as you're a day outside of town, you send a message ahead to the mercenary leader you know, letting them know how many you're going to need. You get a quote, they're able to start preparing to depart, and as soon as you get into town, your mercenaries are ready to travel with you. Or imagine, you finally have the resources to commission a magic item you've been dreaming of. You start to travel to the crafter, but you send word as soon as you start traveling, so that they can start working on it while you get there. Or imagine your party gets separated deep in some dungeon. Having something like Sending makes getting out of that pickle so much easier. The bigger your world gets, the more things you are potentially engaged in, the more valuable Sending becomes. The second spell I want to talk about is Slow. Slow is a 3rd level transmutation spell that allows you to target up to 6 creatures in a 40-foot cube. For 1 minute, or as long as you can maintain concentration, you have massively debuffed those 6 enemies. Their speed is halved, their AC takes a -2 penalty, and so does their dexterity saving throw. There's not a ton of things that hurt saving throws. I mean, you're looking at Bane and Mind Sliver and a couple of other things, but being able to give them a -2 on dexterity, which is one of the most common saving throws, well, it makes your Fireball next round that much more effective. However, that's not what makes this the most valuable. 5e's combat is really sensitive to the action economy, which is how many different things the player characters can do, how many different things the enemies can do. This spell makes 6 enemies far less able to contribute to their side of the action economy, especially if they are spellcasters. Enemy spellcasters now have a 50% chance of their spell taking 2 turns to cast, making them far less dangerous in combat. This spell also means if the enemy has actions and bonus actions, they can now do only one of those, further limiting their options. Even better, enemies with multi-attack now only get a single attack. That huge pit fiend you're fighting with 4 attacks or whatever, now it only has 1. Also, they can no longer do reactions. Spellcasters cannot cast Absorb Elements or Shield or Counterspell, and other enemies no longer get their opportunity attacks, allowing your team to run up, hack and slash, and run away without provoking opportunity attacks. Plus, as they run away, since the enemy only has half movement speed, you can stay out of their easy reach, allowing you to chip away at strong enemies over the entire minute the spell exists. Slow is one of the most powerful debuffs in the game, making enemies less able to contribute, less able to damage, easier to damage, and makes it easier for you to just stay out of their reach and pick away at them. It is a hugely powerful spell. The third spell I want to talk about is Dispel Magic. Dispel Magic is a 3rd level abjuration spell with a range of 120 feet. Quite simply, it allows you to choose one thing, a creature, an object, an effect, and attempt to end whatever's magical about it. If the magical effect comes from something the same level or less as what you're casting Dispel Magic at, it's just poof, gone. Mage Armor on the Necromancer, gone. Arcane Lock, gone. Fly, gone. And if the ability is more powerful, then you do need to roll, but you get to add your spellcasting ability to this ability check, which means you have a pretty decent chance of destroying even higher level spells. Dispel Magic is the spell that allows you to deal with magical traps, magical casters, magical locks, and any other magical impediment in your way. It is a must-have if it's on your spell list. The 4th spell I want to talk about is Tiny Hut, and we are now up to my 2 favorite spells for wizards at this level. And I think you should absolutely take Tiny Hut before you take Fireball, and some of you probably did not see that coming. Tiny Hut doesn't do any damage. It's a 3rd level spell in the Evocation School, and all it does is create a 10-foot radius immobile dome of force that springs around you. Now, what makes it powerful is up to 9 medium creatures can fit inside the dome with you, and inside the dome you are safe, warm, and dry. Spell effects can't come in, attacks can't come in, the weather can't come in, and it's a ritual spell. As soon as you have this in your spell book, you don't need to prepare it, and you can ritual cast it without a spell slot as a wizard. This is incredible because it basically guarantees that if your party can get you a few minutes alone from the danger, you can basically guarantee that they can get a long rest. And long rests are crazy powerful in base 5e. There's variant survival rules that make them more limited, but in the base rules, long rests give you all your HP back, all your spell slots back, half your hit dice back, you end most negative effects from monsters, and you are ready to fight at full power as soon as you wake up. And so being able to take this long rest in conditions where you would otherwise get interrupted, in a dungeon, in the lair, whatever, is crazy powerful. Now, it's not perfect. The enemies can spend those 8 hours surrounding your dome and preparing to attack you, but at least you'll be rested for it. The dome can also be dispelled, so if you're fighting a necromancer, they can send waves of skeletons at your dome, and you'll be completely fine. But if she decides to come down from her lair, cast Dispel Magic, your dome will be popped and you are right in combat. But despite that, having this ability to get uninterrupted long rests is so powerful that I can almost guarantee you it's going to be a better choice for you than Fireball, unless you are just purely focused on maximizing the amount of damage you can do. The final spell I want to talk about for the 5 I am insisting are better than Fireball is Counterspell. Counterspell is my favorite 3rd level spell in the game, and is, in my opinion, the very first 3rd level spell you should take once you have access to it. It's an abjuration spell that requires your reaction, but it allows you to effectively take other spellcasters out of combat and prevents them from taking you out. If you see another spellcaster casting a spell, you're able to quickly lash out with your own arcane interruption in order to try to stop them. Like Dispel Magic, if their spell is the same level or lower than your counterspell, it's just canceled. If it's higher, you have to roll just like Dispel Magic, but it is such a game changer. Imagine an enemy evocation wizard 50 feet in front of your group and you see them begin to cast, sending the small red dot that you recognize as a fireball. You're able to quickly use your own counterspell, ending this effect, saving your entire group from this fireball detonating within the middle. Just an incredible feeling when it works out. Your DM will probably let you get away with this once or twice, and then they'll start throwing spellcasters at you who have their own counterspell. And even when they start doing that, Counterspell is still an incredibly valuable spell. These casters will sometimes try to counterspell you, but rules as written, you actually have the ability to now counterspell their counterspell and still get your spell off, no matter if they try to counterspell it. Now, hearing this, you're thinking, well then my DM will just counterspell my counterspell when I try to counterspell their mage, and it will all be for naught. But you see, that's actually really useful. On the enemy spellcaster's turn, they have to burn their spell slot to cast the spell. You try to counterspell them. They now need to burn more of their limited resources to try to counterspell your counterspell. And perhaps even more important, you destroyed their reaction until the beginning of their next turn. When you're up in combat now, they will not be able to counterspell you because they already used their reaction. Your melee friends can run in and out, hacking and slashing at this mage without any fear of opportunity attacks. They cannot cast shield. They cannot cast absorb elements. They are way more vulnerable. Counterspell is definitely a tactical spell and will depend a little bit on the flavor of your campaign and the amount of spell casting, but the design of spell casting in the action economy in 5e make Counterspell super powerful. Now, having said that, Wizards of the Coast is currently nerfing this spell, but even with their nerfs, it's still super powerful and I still intend to take it going forward. Monsters of the Multiverse, one of their newer books, which is transitioning their monster design to something closer to what they want to have in D&D 1, replaced spells for many monsters with magical abilities that cannot be counterspelled. So I think for one example, like a Pit Fiend who used to have a list of spells they could cast, now has a list of magical abilities that do many of the same things, but because they are not explicitly spelled, cannot be counterspelled. This absolutely makes Counterspell less useful against many monsters, and if you really are just kind of that type of dungeon crawling group, Monster of the Week group, it may be worth considering leaving Counterspell off. But for me, it's still so useful against spellcasters, and spellcasters are such a common and powerful enemy type, it still seems clearly worthwhile, especially since it helps you get your own spells off if there's someone who could be counterspelling you. But judge for your own campaign based on what you're likely to encounter. Now, my final pro tip about Counterspell, it stacks super well with metamagic. One metamagic point with the subtle spell metamagic lets you cast the spell without verbal or somatic components, which means, because Counterspell requires you to see the other caster casting it, you've made it impossible to counterspell. You can get this ability either with a 3-level dip into Sorcerer or taking the Metamagic Adept feat. Being able to counterspell a wizard and watch their face as they realize they cannot counterspell your counterspell is a wonderful feeling that leaves your enemy feeling impotent in the middle of the board. All 5 of these spells are 3rd-level spells I would take over Fireball almost every time, and they all come just straight out of the basic rules. There's even more spells that I would probably take over Fireball, but it depends a little bit on your table and your specific build. So I just really quickly wanted to go over a couple honorable mentions. Again, if I don't mention your favorite spell, tell me about it in the comments. Fly is a great spell. Gives you 10 minutes with a flying speed of 60 feet, letting you quickly escape, get out of reach of melee enemies as you pelt them with firebolts, or generally move quickly around the dungeon or battlefield, potentially flying over traps and other harms. It's not a necessity in my mind though, because there's a lot of ways to get flight in 5e. There's certain classes like Aarakocra that basically get it for free. There's lots of parties that have druids that in a couple levels at 8th level will have the ability to fly you around. When you get 4th level spells, you'll get polymorph and you'll be able to transform into flying creatures, though those of course can't cast. Fly is 100% worth considering, but there are a variety of builds I can think of where I would take Fireball before I would take Fly. Haste is like the inverse of Slow, where Slow's a great debuff, this is a great buff, especially if you have someone who could really use one more attack to help lock down the field. It gives the targeted creature a +2 on AC, advantage on dexterity saving throws, and an extra action they can use for another attack, to dash, disengage, hide, or use an object. It's a nice survivability bonus that lets anyone get more done in a round of combat. But it's especially useful if you have a monk who's dropping stuns to take people out of combat, a paladin dropping huge smites to try to just increase their total damage per round. But one of my favorite types of people to cast it on is an armorer artificer, because their thunder gauntlets, when they're in their guardian armor, impose disadvantage on anyone they hit if they try to attack someone who's not the artificer. So if you have an artificer at this level who already has 2 attacks, you cast this on them to give them a 3rd attack, they can now potentially run between up to 3 enemies, imposing disadvantage on their attacks if they try to attack anyone except that artificer. This, combined with that +2 on the already high artificer AC, means they're going to be really hard to hit, and they're going to distract a large portion of the enemies. Again, this is situational, but when it helps, it can be huge. Now, if you cast it on yourself, it'll still be useful. It lets you move at twice your speed, gives you the extra survivability with the dex saves and the +2 AC, but what it'll also let you do is, for example, use your main action to cast a spell, your hasted action to then hide or take cover, and because of this, you will be far less likely to get attacked. Be forewarned though, if concentration is broken on haste, or at the end of the minute, the person who is hasted spends an entire round where they cannot take actions or move, a pretty huge debuff at the end of this. 2 more honorable mentions I want to get through really quick. First one is going to be Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern is an illusion spell that potentially lets you walk through an encounter without drawing any blood. You cast it in a 30-foot cube, every creature there has to make a saving throw, and if they fail, they are charmed and incapacitated with a speed of 0. Imagine your group is sneaking through the Underdark and you come across a goblin war camp with enough guards that sneaking fully across is going to be very challenging. The wizard quietly pulls out a crystal vial from their component pouch and starts carefully moving their hands, and suddenly the entire camp is basically incapacitated and your group is able to run through quickly. A whole encounter bypassed with a single clever spell. Final one I want to talk about is Major Image. Major Image is a very powerful illusion spell that lets you fill a 20-foot cube with whatever sensory images you want. This spell, like many illusion spells, is one that's going to be limited primarily by how clever you are and your group and how much your DM is willing to play into it. But you can potentially cause a lot of confusion, problems, and bypass entire encounters using spells like this. Little higher level, but my group has previously used hallucinatory terrain to take out some of the most powerful pirates in the world. We found a place overlooking a narrow part of a canyon the ship had to pass through, and we used hallucinatory terrain to make the opening look different than when it really was. As soon as the ships ran aground, we were able to, from above, bombard them with magic and move in quickly while they were effectively incapacitated. And since this is a video about wizards, I want to remind you that if you're a School of Illusion wizard at level 14, you'll be able to start making parts of this illusion real, and that becomes really powerful. My point in this video is broadly that Fireball is an incredibly fun spell. It's almost certainly overused. As a wizard, being able to provide buffs, debuffs, and otherwise protect and enable your party is almost always going to be the best use of your very limited actions. Most combats last less than half a dozen rounds. You only get a chance to get a few spells off, and many of these would be far more useful than just Fireball. The other thing to consider is many of the ones I mentioned are concentration spells. You use your first round getting them up, they start having this benefit throughout the combat, and then if you have extra spells left, that's when you start using things like Fireball to weaken parts of the battlefield, to clear out a huge set of enemies, after you've already set the things that are going to make your party more useful throughout. People underrate this type of thing because it's so much fun to reach into your bag, grab 8d6, and throw them down in your tray. But Buffing and debuffing changes the math more than that does. It's like how people don't realize how overpowered the first level spells of Bless and Bane are, but that's a whole nother video where we get into just how good that is. Do you disagree with my take? Then sound off in the comments to let me know how I have misjudged Fireball, or how your table is super wargaming inspired and being able to damage that many enemies is useful. Or perhaps you have other spells of 3rd level that you would definitely take before Fireball that I didn't mention. Shout those out in the comments if you do, and I appreciate you all tuning in for this video. Thank you.